Welcome back. You're watching World News and I'm your host, Klaudia Czerwińska. Vladimir Putin has suggested that Ukraine be placed under temporary administration. According to Putin's claims, it would allow for new elections and the signing of key accords to reach a resolution to the war. Speaking at a submarine christening ceremony in Murmansk, Vladimir Putin also said that he believes his American counterpart, Donald Trump, truly wants peace. Putin went on to commend Trump's efforts to hold direct talks with Russia. Putin's comments come amid U.S. attempts to re-establish links with Moscow. The Kremlin leader also said that Russia is ready to cooperate with North Korea to end the war. Meanwhile, American authorities dismissed Putin's idea of replacing authorities in Kyiv. U.S. National Security Council spokesperson John Kirby reaffirmed the fact that Ukraine's governance is determined by its constitution and its people. On Tuesday, the U.S. signed a separate agreement with Moscow and Kyiv for a ceasefire in the Black Sea, which Russia said will come into force only when further conditions are met. These include lifting sanctions on Russian state banks and reconnecting them with the SWIFT international payment system. It's game over for the idea of the U.S. moving its nuclear arsenal further east, said Robin Niblett from Chatham House on the latest episode of our show On the Record, commenting on the idea of the Polish president to host American nuclear weapons on Polish soil.
Game over when it comes to nuclear sharing with Poland?
Well, I think game over for the time being, with the idea that the United States would move some of its land-based nuclear capability further east. If the war with Ukraine and the invasion that Russia has undertaken there is part to try and keep NATO away, then the idea that you would bring the forces closer to it. Remember, from a Soviet standpoint in the last Cold War, they had a buffer zone. It was called the Warsaw Pact. But if we get to a point where Russia and nuclear weapons owned by NATO are increasingly close together, I think, I hate to say this, J.D. Vance is probably right, that it would certainly be seen as an escalatory step by the Russians at a time when we really need to focus on ensuring the survival of Ukraine as a sustainably sovereign country.
The latest version of the U.S.-Ukraine mineral deal could undermine Kyiv's accession bid to the EU by giving Washington the first offer to reconstruction projects. That's all according to a leaked draft that was obtained by Bloomberg News and reported on Friday. Our EU correspondent Angela Skujins reports from the Belgian capital what we know about the draft and its impact so far.
International media organisation Bloomberg News is reporting on Friday that according to a leaked draft of the highly contentious US-Ukraine mineral deal, Washington wants to have first dibs on the rebuilding of serious infrastructure as well as the extraction of critical minerals. This is according to a leaked draft of the proposal obtained by that newspaper. Now, according to Bloomberg News, Washington wants to play a major role in the reconstruction of that infrastructure. We're talking about roads, railways and ports. They also want their hands on the extraction of key minerals as well as oil and gas. If approved by Ukraine, this would give Washington a major economic foothold in Europe and could potentially ostracize Ukraine from its European allies, as well as endangering its bid to join the EU. But what we know so far is that a Ukrainian official has told Reuters that it is examining this proposal from Washington with senior members of the cabinet exploring their response over the next couple of days. And while much of this deal is shrouded in mystery, we understand that the guts of this is an investment fund. Half of that money would be fronted by Washington to fund the construction of Ukraine following Russia's 3-year invasion. Half of that money would also, of course, be funded by Ukraine. So we'll have to wait and see how this deal plays out in the next coming days. Angela Skujins from Brussels for TVP World.
Bulgarian authorities have proposed to form a multinational coordination center to ensure safety of shipping in the Black Sea. The idea has been presented by the Bulgarian Prime Minister following the Peace and Security for Ukraine meeting in Paris.
The Bulgarian proposal sees the centre providing constant maritime surveillance and early warning of potential threats in the Black Sea basin. According to Bulgaria's Prime Minister, the goal is to establish guidelines for shipping and monitoring for potential hostile actions against infrastructure in the Black Sea. Moreover, the head of the Bulgarian government said that the restoration of commercial shipping is extremely important for the country as it impacts the whole of East-West trade. At the same time, he pointed out that the Black Sea Mine Action Group is a good example of how coordination between coastal states can contribute to security, safety and freedom of navigation in the basin. The motion is not the first such idea to come out of Sofia. 3 years ago, Bulgarian authorities insisted on hosting a NATO coordination center for shipping in the Black Sea, but the idea failed to take off.
Tensions in the Baltic Sea are escalating as a Russian surveillance aircraft was intercepted by German fighter aircraft on Thursday.
The German Air Force scrambled its quick reaction jets from Lager Air Base near Rostock after the unidentified Russian plane, an Ilyushin Il-20, was spotted over the Baltic Sea flying without a flight plan or active responder. German Eurofighter Typhoons approached to identify the aircraft, which was then escorted back towards Russia's Kaliningrad enclave. The plane was first spotted near the German Baltic island of Rügen, prompting concerns over potential risks to civilian air traffic. While such incidents are not uncommon, the heightened tensions since Russia's invasion of Ukraine have led NATO countries to remain on high alert to protect their airspace.
Serbia is facing a potential oil supply crisis after the U.S. sanctions waiver for its sole oil refinery expired at midnight, leaving the NIS facility at risk of losing access to vital crude supplies.
Despite ongoing talks, President Aleksandar Vučić confirmed that discussions to extend the waiver had failed, leaving Serbia's energy security in jeopardy. NIS, which is majority owned by Russia's Gazprom Neft, operates Serbia's only oil refinery, with a capacity of 4.8 million tons annually, meeting most of the country's energy needs. Vučić told the Financial Times that he did not expect any last-minute breakthroughs, adding that negotiations with the US and Russia had yielded no changes in the American stance. The expiration of the waiver means the refinery could face significant disruptions, as Gazprom Neft was required to divest its majority stake under US sanctions. NIS relies heavily on crude imports, with around 80% of its supply coming from Croatia's Janaf pipeline, and the remainder sourced from domestic production. With waiver now expired, Serbia faces uncertain prospects for securing the oil needed to sustain its energy demands.
U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance will land in Greenland on Friday to visit one of the world's most remote posts. The Pitovik space base lies beyond the Arctic Circle with little sunlight for 3 months of the year, but it is strategically important, a fact repeatedly emphasized by Donald Trump, who says he wants to take over the island.
Touchdown at America's most northerly runway. For more than 3/4 of the year, the remote Pitovik Air Base in northwestern Greenland is gripped by ice, with planes providing the only form of access. The vast, frozen landscape came to prominence during the Second World War, when Nazi Germany occupied Denmark, Greenland's colonial overlord. The US built listening posts and runways on the undefended territory to monitor the North Atlantic. Previously known as Thule, Pitovik is around 1,500 kilometers from Greenland's capital Nuuk, which itself is closer to Washington than Copenhagen. After the war, a treaty between the US and Denmark formally organized the arrangement. Denmark's NATO membership permitted America to operate a military station there, with the Cold War reinforcing its strategic significance. In 1968, a US B-52 bomber crashed in the sea near the base while carrying 4 thermonuclear bombs on a Cold War mission. That led to radioactive contamination. The US arrangement remained as Greenland became semi-autonomous. The base is now home to sophisticated radar systems that provide Washington with early warnings in case of attack, and it's home to the globe's most northerly deep-water port. Reports suggest that around 150 American Space Force and US Air Force members are based there, alongside Greenlanders and Danes. Whether that number increases as President Trump's interest in acquiring the island intensifies remains to be seen.
The United States Agency for Global Media has reversed its decision to terminate funding for Radio Free Europe for 2025. The move follows a U.S. District Court ruling that blocked what the court deemed an unlawful attempt by the agency to cut congressionally approved funds.
The president of Radio Free Europe already called the reversal, quote, an encouraging step, but at the same time stressed the need for dialogue with the agency's leadership. Moreover, he also emphasized the importance of keeping the media outlet operational, especially as censorship around the world is on the rise. Funding for Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, was terminated earlier this month after President Donald Trump ordered the U.S. Agency for Global Media to be dismantled. In response, the media outlet sued the Trump administration, seeking access to the $77 million of funding approved by the Congress.
Local media in Turkey have reported that authorities have detained the lawyer for Istanbul Mayor Ekrem İmamoğlu. The arrest of Mehmet Pelivan comes just over a week after İmamoğlu was held by police, sparking widespread protests. Pelivan represented the Istanbul mayor when he was accused of alleged corruption and links to a terrorist organization after being detained on March 19th. Turkish media report that the lawyer is accused of laundering the proceeds of crime, charges that have been denied. And so this marks the end of our service. Thank you so much for joining, and we really do hope that you're going to stay here on TVP World for more news and features.